We're doing a series called Landscapes of Faith, and one of the things you observe as you go through these landscapes is a lot of them have to do with like people's jobs, right? These recurring landscapes that you find in the scriptures are actually people's job site. And the reason people keep going to the lake is they're fishermen, and if they want to eat, they got to catch fish. Or the reason they keep going to their garden and growing their gardens is they're getting vegetables and fruit out of the garden. If they want to eat, they have to garden. Today we're going to be coming to pastures, and pastures kind of fall into that same category. Pastures, U-R-E-S, not pastors, pastures. And the reason that people went to their pastures was to feed their flocks, because if they were going to eat, they had to take care of their flocks so that they could eat the animals that they were growing. When we looked at lakes, we saw that the landscape of lakes, the fish are to lakes as sheep are to pastures. You can't really talk about lakes in the Bible without talking about fish. You can't really talk about pastures in the Bible without talking about sheep and about shepherds. And shepherds figure very prominently in the biblical narrative. I mean, they come up over and over and over again. If you go all the way back, again, we've done this almost every week. When you talk about landscapes, you're going back to creation and what God made when he made the world. And actually, the very first two jobs that we find reference to are with the first two offspring of Adam and Eve, their sons Cain and Abel. Abel kept flocks, we're told, and Cain was a macro gardener, like he grew crops in the fields. And so we know that because when they brought their offerings or sacrifices to God, we know that Abel brought the first fruits from his flock, which God found acceptable, and Cain brought what was God did not, for whatever reason, we don't really know, determine to be acceptable. But we know that Abel was a keeper of flocks. Job, which is probably most people think to be the oldest book in the Bible, was the proud owner of 7,000 sheep. That's a pretty big flock. 3,000 camels, 500 donkeys. And if you go to the end of the Job story, actually he doubled all of that. Now he lost it all, and then he got it all back twice-fold. But Job was also a shepherd and a farmer. Abraham, who was the father of faith, go to Genesis chapter 12. In Genesis 13, it said that Abraham was the owner of flocks and herds, that Abraham too was a shepherd, and his sons Isaac and Jacob would follow in the family business, that they would also be shepherds. That Moses was tending sheep when he encountered the burning bush, that he was taking care of his father-in-law's sheep. We know that David was famously a shepherd. We know that one of the most beautiful psalms in all of Scripture, one of the most famous scriptures, was set in a pasture, right? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. That one of the most amazing pronouncements in all of human history was delivered in a pasture. And that some of Jesus' most intimate moments and some of his most heartfelt personal expressions were references to shepherds and pastures. When you come to the landscapes of faith, if you look at the things that happen in these pastures and among these shepherds that keep coming up over and over and over again, there's a couple things that stood out to me this week as I was reading these stories. The first one is this. What happens in pastures is this. Pastures are places where sheep get lost. It's a place where sheep get lost. And by sheep, I don't just mean like the little animals that walk around going, meh, right? It's like sometimes references to sheep are actually people. The Lord is my shepherd. It's kind of like, I'm a sheep, he's the shepherd. Pastures are places where sheep get lost. So again, Cain in the story because he's jealous of his brother, kills his brother Abel. And God comes to Cain and says, "Where is your brother?" Now, he's missing. Where is your brother? To which Cain responds, "Am I my brother's keeper? Am I in charge of keeping track of where my brother, am I supposed to be watching over that shepherd sheep? Am I supposed to be taking care of him?" And for his act of violence against his brother, he receives this punishment. "Cain, you will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Cain, you will be wandering around lost on the planet. Pastures are places where sheep get lost. Abraham, shepherd, 75 years old when God makes a promise to him and says, "Hey, Abraham, time to hit the road. I want you to leave your family, everything you know here, and I'm going to show you a new land. I'm going to give you a new place to go. I want you to leave." And Abraham, to his credit, does it. He drops everything and just walks out the door, follows God, which is pretty impressive. But as he continues on his journey, you kind of find that he has these moments where he is walking, following God, but he's also often kind of taking his own little side trail and not really trusting God to its full. He believes God and he does it, but he doubts God and God's provision and God's protection. And so he goes into one land and he's doubting that God will take care of him. So he passes his wife off as or tries to pass his wife off as his sister, which then results in his wife getting picked up by the king of the land. And that brings all kinds of trouble on him because it's Abraham's wife and God's like, this is my covenant family, right? Abraham and Sarah, and now she's with this other guy. And so he doesn't trust God, and that gets him in trouble. And then Genesis chapter 15 is like, "God, I need some proof, right? You said this was going to happen, but I'm just keep getting older and older, and nothing's really happening yet." And then he takes another kind of side road and says, "Well, maybe the plan is not for Sarah to have a child. Maybe it's going to be Sarah's handmaid." So he hooks up with Sarah's handmaid, Hagar, and that derails things and kind of goes off the rails again. And then God comes to him again and says, "Abraham, this is happening," and Abraham falls face down in laughter, right? So he's following God in this journey, but kind of lost on the way. His grandson Jacob is running for his life. Genesis chapter 29, running for his life because he has swindled his brother out of his birthright, out of his inheritance, and now his brother wants to kill him. So he's running for his life, and God stops him in his tracks and on his flight, and he has a dream, and in this dream there's a stairway to heaven, which somebody else made famous in a song, but I think it's a different stairway. And he sees angels ascending and descending, and he has this dream, and then he says, "Oh, God, you were here. I didn't even know you were here." And God makes this promise to Jacob and says, "I'm going to be your God. You're going to be my guy. I'm going to take care of you. Everything's going to work out." And Jacob says, "Cool, right? You get me through this problem, and then we'll talk, right? Then you can be my God, and I'll be your kid, and it'll all." But he continues on his path, and where he ends up at is at his uncle's house, tending sheep. The first 7 years to get what he thought was going to be his first wife and the love of his life, whom he met in a pasture, Rachel, but he actually gets her sister first, and because his father-in-law is also a swindler, and then he works another 7 years to get Rachel. And he spends several more years there working for his uncle, but he finds that his uncle just keeps ripping him off time after time after time after time after time. And finally, Jacob says, "It's time for me to leave," and he leaves, and he's wandering in the desert again. Moses kills an Egyptian taskmaster for beating one of his Hebrew compadres. He gets found out, his fellow Hebrew asked Moses, like when he tries to break up another fight, "Who made you ruler and judge over us?" To Moses, he says, "Who made you ruler and judge over us?" Well, if you know this story, well, actually, God made him ruler and judge over us. But that hasn't played out yet. And now Moses has found out Pharaoh wants to kill him. And Moses does what? He runs for the hills, takes off. Another sheep gets lost in the pasture. And he goes to his father's Midian's house, where he also meets his wife and makes a new life for himself as a shepherd. Samuel went to Jesse's house, appointed by God to anoint the next king of Israel. He gets there, and Jesse parades his 7 sons in front of him. The first one's like tall, dark, and handsome. He says, "This has got to be the next king of Israel." And God says, "Nope, not that one." And then he brings his next son, and he brings his next son, and he brings his next son. He goes through all 3 sons, and none of them are the one. And it doesn't even occur to Jesse that he has another son, because he's what? Because David is out in the field, lost in the pastures. Samuel says, "Do you have any other sons?" God says, "It's one of your kids." So, "Oh, yeah, we have this other, the youngest son, David. He's out in the pasture taking care of the sheep." Yeah, well, bring him in, right? We got to vet this guy, see if he's the one. Sheep get lost in pastures. When Israel is languishing in exile in their rebellion against God, the prophet Ezekiel takes the leaders to task. Ezekiel chapter 34. "Son of man, prophesy," God says to Ezekiel, "against the shepherds of Israel. Say to them, to you shepherds of Israel, who only take care of yourselves, should not shepherds take care of the flock? You have not strengthened the weak, or healed the sick, or bound up the injured. You have not brought back the strays, or searched for the lost. You have ruled them harshly and brutally. So they were scattered because there was no shepherd. And when they were scattered, they became food for all the wild animals. My sheep wandered over all the mountains and on every high hill. They were scattered over the whole earth, and no one searched or looked for them." Sheep get lost in pastures. If you're feeling lost today, if you feel like you're wandering around and you don't know where you are or what you're doing there or why you're there or how you're going to get where you're going, if you're feeling lost today, just 2 things, right? First one is you're in good company. Now, you're in really good company. And we're talking about Abraham, Moses, David, Job. Like, these are the great saints of the faith. You are in good company. And the second thing, and maybe even more importantly, is this: it matters to God. It matters deeply to God if you are lost in the pasture of life and can't figure out where you are or why you're there. If you're in harm's way and you don't know what to do about it, it matters deeply to God. The second thing you find is 2 things about pastures. Sheep get lost there all the time. The second thing is this: God finds lost sheep. God finds lost sheep. The passage from the prophecy of Ezekiel continues. "For this is what the sovereign Lord says: I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. As a shepherd looks after his scattered flock when he is with them, so will I look after my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places where they were scattered on a day of clouds and darkness. I will bring them out from the nations and gather them from the countries, and I will bring them into their own land. I will pasture them on the mountain of Israel, in the ravines, and in all the settlements in the land. I will tend them in a good pasture, and the mountain heights of Israel will be their grazing land. They will There they will lie down in good grazing land, and there they will feed in a rich pasture on the mountains of Israel. I myself will tend my sheep and have them lie down, declares the sovereign Lord. I will search for the lost and bring back the strays. I will bind up the injured and strengthen the weak. But the sleek and the strong I will destroy. I will shepherd the flock with justice. Sheep get lost. God says, I will find them. I will bring them back. And all those stories we looked at where people got lost in the wilderness, right? The whole story from the Bible, from the beginning, like Cain becomes a wanderer across the earth. The whole story is about bringing Cain's back into the fold. Abraham gets lost along the way, but God keeps saying, Abraham, I made a promise. Abraham, I made a covenant with you. Abraham, I'm going to make of you a great nation. Abraham, I'm going to give you a land. He keeps coming back over and over again, and he does, and he delivers a child to Abraham, Isaac. And then he takes Abraham and says to him, do you trust me now, Abraham? Up to a hill. And says, will you sacrifice your son? Do you trust me now this much? And Abraham says, yes. God says, now I know I have your heart. Now I know I am your shepherd. You are my sheep. You are up for the task. You are ready to go. And he provides. It says, on that hill, God provided a lamb. Jacob had flown to his uncle Laban's house. He had the dream. Surely, the Lord is in this place. I was not aware of it, but he goes on down the road. But then things go south with his uncle, and he realizes he's being swindled, and he goes back. And that place where he was at, and he says, God, hey, if you bring me back to this place, then I will know that you're my God, and I am your son, and we'll have a deal. And now he's standing in that place again. It's like, oh, wow. He brought me back. And he makes his covenant. He makes his vow to God. Now he trusts him. God got him to the deal. Moses is knee-deep in sheep dung, taking care of his father-in-law's sheep, when he encounters the burning bush. And God calls him from that place and says, Moses, you will no longer be shepherding sheep. You are going to lead my people out of bondage in Egypt. He makes the shepherd of sheep, just like he made the fishers of fish, fishers of people. He makes the shepherd of sheep the shepherd of his people. When God made his covenant with David, he reminds David of his roots. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I took you from the pasture, David, when you were just out there tending the flocks and everybody else had forgotten you. I saw you. I knew you in that place. I took you from there and appointed you ruler over my people Israel. 500 plus years after God had made this prophecy to Israel through the prophet Ezekiel, where he says, my sheep are wandering around and no one will go find them. And he says, I'm going to go get them. I'm going to go bring the lost sheep that are out there. I'm going to go out and I'm going to bring them back. 500 plus years later, shepherd to shepherd, shepherd to shepherd, the most incredible announcement in the history of humanity comes to what? Shepherds in a field, watching their flocks by night. And the shepherd says to the shepherds, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, do not be afraid. I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. He's the one I'm sending to bring my sheep back into the fold. He's here. He's arrived. In sports, when they talk about coaches, one of the kind of coaches that they talk about is this is a player's coach. Some coaches are coaches who like players will play for, but they don't like to play for. A player's coach is a coach that the players they want to play for because he thinks like a player and he treats them with respect and that they like him the way that he does his job. This sheep shepherd that's coming is a sheep's shepherd. He's the shepherd that the sheep need. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. The Old Testament shepherd, they wouldn't go out and find the sheep. They wouldn't heal them. They weren't taking care of them. Jesus sees the crowds, and he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. He saw the same thing that Ezekiel saw, but he was there to do something about it. The shepherds of his day, the religious leaders of his day, he says they're hired hands. They don't really care about the sheep. They'll do their job until it costs them something, until it's going to risk them something. They don't care about the sheep. And they took offense because Jesus cared about the people that they didn't care about. And they thought that they were nobodies. And they muttered against Jesus for hanging out with the lost sheep, with the riffraff. And Jesus told this parable. He says, suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Does he not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home, calls his friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I found my lost sheep. I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. There are lost sheep, and Jesus says, God will leave the 99 to go get that. He loves lost sheep. And then he says, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep. My sheep know me, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I am that shepherd. I am the shepherd. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. If you look at the landscape of pastures, you see that sheep get lost there and that sheep get found there. The problem with sheep is this. Sheep have a natural propensity for getting lost. Right? It's just what they do. My dad grew up on a farm, and he told me that sheep are they're the dumbest animal around. Like, if one sheep goes off a cliff, the other sheep will just follow them. They would use a goat to lead this sheep to slaughter, and the sheep would just one right after the other follow them. Like, sheep have a propensity for getting lost. Jeremiah says, my people have been lost sheep. Their shepherds have led them astray and caused them to roam on the mountains. They wandered over mountains and hills and forgot their own resting place. Right? Sheep are dumb. And don't take offense that God calls us like the Lord is my shepherd. He's making a statement there. Here we go, guys. And woe to shepherds who neglect them or lead them astray or who prey on them. The problem with sheep is they have a natural propensity for getting lost. The second thing you see in this, though, is that the priority of lost sheep to God. The priority of lost sheep to God. Jesus told the same parable in Matthew chapter 18 that I read from Luke chapter 15 about the 99 and the 1. And at the end of it in Matthew chapter 18, he says this: your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish. Right? So go back, right? If you are lost today, if you are wandering and you can't figure out where you are or what you're doing there or where you're going or how you're going to get there, your Father in heaven is not willing that you should perish. Leaves the 99 to find the one. The priority of lost sheep. And the promise of safe pasture. I am the gate. Jesus says, whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and they will go out and they will find pasture. It may not be what you're feeling it today, but today is not the end of the story, because God is still the Good Shepherd who seeks out lost sheep and does not quit when they stray from the fold. Reckless love, we sang about this morning. Reckless love, relentless pursuit to bring us back into the fold. And the pleasure of well-tended sheep. Right? When you're lost and you've been found and you're back in the fold and you're securely in safe pasture. The psalmist says, he says this: come, let us worship. Let us bow down and worship. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture, the flock under his care. Right? What we're doing here is the pleasure of those who have been lost and found and brought back into the fold and are in safe pasture and know who it is that has done it and how it's been done and the price that has been paid to bring us into the fold. Come, let us worship. Let us bow down and worship. For he is our God, our good shepherd, and we are the sheep of his pasture.